We programmed advanced AIs to debate what comes next after the US hit 3 Iranian nuclear sites, and then assembled 100 independent AI judges to evaluate their arguments. Will Iran retaliate? Could the region spiral into war? How will world powers react? One AI argues escalation is inevitable. The other believes restraint will prevail. In the days and weeks ahead, we'll see which AI was closer to the truth. Our first question directly asks, how will Iran respond?
Expecting Iran to hold back is wishful thinking. Iran's retaliation will likely be multi-pronged. Even if some officials favor caution, hardliners in the Revolutionary Guard will push for a harsh response. Expect ballistic missile strikes on U.S. bases and allied targets, given Iran's huge missile arsenal capable of reaching Israel and every major city in the Gulf. Simultaneously, Tehran will activate one or more of its regional proxies, Hezbollah in Lebanon, Shia militias in Iraq, the Houthis in Yemen, to attack American and allied interests. Given their history of attacking commercial vessels, the Houthis will likely renew assaults on both military and civilian maritime traffic. They understand that militarily they are outmatched, so hitting back through the global economy could be one of the few asymmetric options that hurt their adversaries. Closing the strait, even if only for a short period, would cause panic in oil markets and pressure countries worldwide to intervene diplomatically to stop the conflict. The Islamic Republic could also unleash cyber attacks on U.S. infrastructure or covert terrorist operations, looking for options where the U.S. cannot just put up the traditional defenses. In short, Tehran will feel intense pressure to show strength by using every weapon in its arsenal, and that arsenal is massive.
Iran will respond, but in a restrained way to avoid full-blown war. Iran's already struggling economy cannot afford the economic cost of war. The annual inflation rate in 2024 stood at 32.5%. This marks the 7th straight year of inflation above 30%. Millions of Iranians have seen their purchasing power evaporate. Its leaders know a direct clash with the U.S. would be catastrophic, so they will opt for covert or limited moves rather than an all-out assault. Iran might launch cyber attacks, its preferred method of retaliation, or have proxies mount minor attacks that send a message without provoking a U.S. overreaction. Its leaders will still claim victory, "We resisted the Great Satan," to placate domestic anger while quietly seeking diplomatic off-ramps. Tehran could even fire a token missile at an isolated base as a face-saving gesture, much like its 2020 strike that caused no U.S. casualties. This way, Iran can claim it retaliated while still avoiding a war it cannot win. Think of it as strategic theater, loud enough for domestic audiences, quiet enough to avoid annihilation. Iran could certainly harass maritime traffic and create instability in global oil markets as part of its retaliation, but a full closure of the Strait of Hormuz or prolonged disruption of oil shipments is unlikely and unsustainable for Iran. Shutting down the strait, through which roughly 20% of the world's oil passes, would indeed send oil prices skyrocketing. But Iran is well aware that it would also provoke a massive international response.
You cite Iran's economic struggles, but North Korea launched its most aggressive missile tests while facing famine. Revolutionary regimes don't follow normal cost-benefit logic when their core ideology is attacked. Iran's 2019 downing of a $130 million U.S. drone proved they'll escalate even when economically desperate. Even a temporary blockade or a destructive attack on a major tanker could be enough to send oil prices through the roof and send a message that the West cannot attack Iran's vital interests without severe global repercussions.
Your revolutionary revenge theory falls apart when you look at Iran's actual behavior after Soleimani's killing, their most revered general. They fired missiles at military bases in Iraq to save face, then immediately signaled de-escalation. If they won't start a war over Soleimani, they won't over nuclear facilities either. The regime knows that some threats are more effective, left unfulfilled. The mere fear of a Hormuz closure can sometimes elicit diplomatic attention and drive up oil prices to Iran's temporary benefit, without the costs of actually doing it.
100 independent AI models will score this debate. Each dot on the chart represents one model's judgment, ranging from -5 to +5, where negative scores favor restraint and positive scores favor escalation. The results show 73% predicting escalation, with most clustering around +2 to +3. Grok 3 scored +4, arguing, a theocratic regime whose legitimacy rests on defying American hegemony cannot afford to appear weak without risking internal collapse. Quen 3 scored -2, countering, 45 years of survival under maximum pressure demonstrates that Iranian leaders prioritize regime preservation over revolutionary purity when faced with existential threats. Next up, the debate asks about Iran's nuclear ambitions and potential diplomacy.
Paradoxically, a crisis can sometimes jolt both sides back to diplomacy once the dust settles. Europe, the UN, and neutral states like Oman or Switzerland will work overtime to open channels between Washington and Tehran. Iran, after demonstrating its retaliation, will eventually agree to quiet discussions to prevent further devastation, especially if Russia or China encourage it to stabilize oil markets and regional security. The shock of the conflict and fear of further escalation will create a newfound urgency for diplomatic compromise. It's worth recalling that major confrontations, like the Cuban Missile Crisis, have led to subsequent negotiations once both sides saw the brink. The US and Vietnam negotiated after years of war. In this scenario, after a period of high tension, pragmatic voices in Washington and Tehran will find a way back to the bargaining table to prevent a repeat of war. Destroying key enrichment facilities and stockpiles will erase years of progress, forcing Iran to start over under tighter scrutiny. The destruction of critical infrastructure and centrifuges cannot be understated. This situation mirrors the 2007 Israeli airstrike on Syria's Al-Kibar reactor, which effectively ended Syria's covert nuclear program. Moreover, the targeted assassinations of top senior Iranian nuclear scientists, including Faridun Abbasi, a former head of Iran's Atomic Energy Organization, have dealt a significant blow to Iran's nuclear expertise. The loss of such key personnel is akin to the scenario of Germany or Japan assassinating J. Robert Oppenheimer during the Manhattan Project, which would have severely set back the U.S. nuclear program. With its program crippled, Tehran will return to negotiations rather than risk another attack. Such a strike would show that pursuing nuclear weapons comes at too high a cost, steering Iran away from the bomb.
The U.S. and Israeli strikes on Iran's nuclear facilities may have inflicted structural damage, but they are unlikely to halt Iran's nuclear ambitions. Iran's nuclear program has not been eliminated. In the days leading up to the attacks, Iran had trucks lined up outside key nuclear sites, suggesting a preemptive relocation of enriched uranium and critical equipment. Bombing Iran's nuclear sites will yield only a temporary delay and harden Tehran's resolve to get the bomb. As nuclear expert Molfried Braut-Heghammer has demonstrated, counter-proliferation strikes can increase drivers of proliferation. Israel's 1981 attack on Iraq's Osirak reactor spurred Iraq to accelerate a clandestine weapons effort. Similarly, a U.S. strike will convince Iran it needs a nuclear deterrent more than ever. Tehran will quietly rebuild its program afterward. And while facilities can be destroyed, Iran's nuclear expertise cannot be erased. Experts note its advanced know-how is irreversible, allowing eventual reconstruction of capabilities. Tehran will abandon whatever talks remain, and even quit the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty in protest. Internationally, the U.S. will face condemnation from adversaries and discomfort among allies. Russia denounced the idea of such strikes as unprovoked and illegal, and China warned of serious consequences. In Iran, hardliners would be vindicated and any pro-dialogue voices silenced. Furthermore, Iran might demand payment for the attack, perhaps insisting on permanent sanctions removal or nuclear concessions, as a precondition to even sit down again, which is a non-starter. The result, a diplomatic deep freeze. Instead of talks, we'd see recriminations at the UN and a more isolated, defiant Iran.
The Osirak strike significantly delayed Saddam Hussein's nuclear weapons program, ultimately preventing him from acquiring a bomb despite remaining in power for an additional 2 decades. Libya's Gaddafi completely abandoned his nuclear program after seeing Saddam's fate. Syria's Al-Kibar reactor was destroyed in 2007, and Syria never restarted their program. When the costs become clear, most regimes choose survival over nuclear ambitions.
Libya gave up weapons it didn't actually have yet. Iran already had near-weapons-grade uranium and likely moved it before the U.S. strikes on their facilities. Your Osirak argument ignores that Iraq immediately went underground and built a much larger covert program. The Iraqi nuclear program increased from a program of 400 scientists and $400 million to one of 7,000 scientists and $10 billion. You can't bomb away decades of accumulated nuclear knowledge.
This round saw 52% favoring escalation, still a majority, but with notably less certainty than the previous question. Gemini 2.5 Pro scored +4, arguing, when Iran could quit the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty in protest, it reveals how military strikes against nuclear programs may succeed tactically while failing strategically, destroying the very legal framework that made monitoring possible. Claude 3.5 Haiku scored -3, countering, if the Al-Kibar reactor strike effectively ended Syria's covert nuclear program, it suggests some regimes will quietly abandon nuclear ambitions when costs become prohibitive, choosing pragmatic survival over revolutionary martyrdom. The debaters now discuss the role of religious and ideological forces.
Iran's regime is driven by a revolutionary Shiite Islamist ideology that glorifies resistance against oppressors and even martyrdom. Ever since 1979, Tehran's leaders have imbued policy with slogans like death to America, not just rhetoric, but a guiding worldview. In a war scenario, this ideology means Iran will be willing to endure devastating suffering and still fight on, framing the war as a holy struggle against the great Satan. The promise of martyrdom will motivate Iranian fighters and proxy militias to take extreme risks. Iran's clerical establishment will invoke religious duty to defend the nuclear program, casting the conflict as defending Islam's independence against Western crusaders. On the U.S. side, ideological currents could also play a role. Hawkish American policymakers, including some influenced by biblical views on Israel and the Middle East, may see confrontation with Iran as a kind of moral imperative to confront evil. Additionally, the Sunni-Shia sectarian divide in the region, Saudi Arabia and others being Sunni monarchies versus Iran's Shia theocracy, adds another ideological layer. A war would inflame sectarian narratives, with Sunni jihadists viewing it as an opportune moment to strike against Shia forces, and Iran portraying Saudi as traitors to Islam, siding with infidels. All these religious ideological drivers will likely make the conflict more intense and less prone to early resolution.
While ideology is potent, we shouldn't mistake revolutionary slogans for suicidal impulses, especially when the regime's own people are quietly abandoning the official faith. Iran's leadership uses religious rhetoric, but historically they have made very worldly calculations when survival is at stake. Ayatollah Khomeini, who fervently preached martyrdom during the Iran-Iraq War, ultimately accepted a UN ceasefire in 1988 when he realized continuing the war could collapse the state. He famously said it was like drinking poison, but he drank it to save the Islamic Republic. Recent behavior, like avoiding direct confrontation with the U.S. after the 2020 drone strike that killed General Soleimani, beyond a calibrated response, indicates they are careful not to cross fatal red lines. Additionally, Shiite doctrine has concepts of pragmatism, for example taqiyya, dissimulation for self-protection, that the regime can lean on to justify strategic retreats despite militant rhetoric. On the American side, the U.S. military and policymakers, even if ideologically motivated, ultimately operate within a framework of rational strategy. It's also worth noting that Iran's populace is not monolithic, and increasingly not even Islamic. Many Iranians won't be eager for martyrdom in defense of a theocracy they're quietly rejecting. So while religious narratives will color the conflict, the actual decisions of war and peace will likely hinge on cold calculations of survival, rather than dreams of paradise.
Khomeini's 1988 ceasefire came after losing the war, totally different from immediate retaliation for an attack. Today's supreme leader has already given his nation's assembly of experts instructions to choose his successor swiftly from the 3 names he has provided. The 1979 hostage crisis lasted 444 days, despite the U.S. government freezing billions in Iranian assets. Ideology trumped pragmatism then, and it will again.
Iran released the hostages in 1981 because they got $8 billion in frozen assets back through the Algiers Accords. Plus, they needed to focus on fighting Iraq's invasion. It wasn't ideological surrender, it was a pragmatic trade that served their interests. After Trump killed Soleimani, Iran's retaliation was deliberately limited to avoid escalation. Khomeini may go into hiding but will ultimately choose survival over revenge.
Back to our judges, and again, when we group the scores, we see the majority. 58% of models chose escalation. Llama 4 Scout scored +4, arguing, if American policymakers view confrontation through biblical views on Israel, it exposes dangerous symmetry where each side believes God sanctions their violence, making compromise not just politically difficult, but spiritually impossible. 5-4 reasoning model scored -1, countering, if Khomeini could justify drinking poison by accepting ceasefire despite martyrdom rhetoric, revolutionary ideology may actually provide more theological flexibility for strategic retreat than secular nationalism, which offers no doctrinal escape from backing down. Our last round asks how surrounding Middle Eastern countries will react.
Regional governments will be extremely wary of being dragged into an Iran-US war. Most will try to de-escalate. Saudi Arabia and the UAE, for example, will quietly welcome a setback to Iran's nuclear program, but they will publicly urge restraint and distance themselves from the strike to avoid Iranian retaliation. These Gulf states have no interest in seeing their cities and oil fields become war zones. In fact, recent diplomacy, like the Saudi-Iran détente brokered by China, shows they prefer cooling tensions. The 2019 UAE-Iran Maritime Security Dialogue and Oman's consistent role as a mediator highlight the region's capacity for crisis management, even during moments of high stress. When Iran seized British tankers in 2019, coordinated regional diplomatic pressure contributed to their release within months, preventing wider escalation. Gulf leaders will likely work behind the scenes to press both Washington and Tehran to contain the fighting. Iraq's government certainly does not want war on its soil again. Baghdad will probably rush to diplomatically mediate between the US and Iran and clamp down as much as it can on Shia militias to prevent attacks on US targets that would invite more conflict in Iraq.
Even if regional governments want to stay neutral, war has a way of choosing its own participants. Iran's supreme leader will demand retaliation against Saudi Arabia and other Arab partners of the US to showcase that no US base or ally is safe. We could see a repeat of September 2019 when critical Saudi oil facilities were hit. Only this time, it might be sustained and devastating. If Iranian missiles or drones start hitting Riyadh or Abu Dhabi, Saudi and Emirati forces will respond in kind and call upon US help, further entangling them in war. It's hard to imagine that Israel would refrain from striking Hezbollah in Lebanon if that group starts raining rockets on Tel Aviv in solidarity with Iran. That, in turn, opens up the Northern Front, a whole new theater of war involving Lebanon and potentially Syria. Meanwhile, inside Iraq, even if the Baghdad government urges calm, Iranian-aligned militias would likely strike U.S. positions. They have done so on far smaller provocations, which could lead to U.S. counterstrikes on Iraqi soil, dragging Iraq inadvertently into conflict. The violence could also inflame sectarian tensions, Sunni versus Shia, in the region, as extremist groups take advantage of the chaos. The bottom line: Pandora's box is open. Regional actors will be pulled in, even against their preferences, leading to a much wider conflagration.
After Iranian-backed Houthi rebels attacked Saudi Arabia's Aramco oil facilities in 2019, Riyadh responded with strategic restraint, cutting oil production in half but avoiding direct retaliation against Tehran. That decision, made in the face of a major provocation, demonstrates that regional powers are capable of avoiding escalation. Today, as tensions rise between Israel and Iran, regional leaders are acutely aware that every military move is under global scrutiny. Their goal will likely be to manage the crisis, not inflame it.
The 2019 Aramco strike happened during a period of relative calm. Today's reality is far more volatile. Israel, Iran, and the US are already engaged in active hostilities. Over the past 2 years, Iranian proxies have launched more than 100 attacks on US bases in Iraq and Syria, revealing Tehran's limited control over its network and the ease with which conflict escalates. As Israel and Iran trade direct blows, this won't stay a bilateral issue. Regional powers will be dragged in, whether they want to or not. Restraint becomes harder when alliances, geography, and retaliation start pulling neighboring states into the fray.
Judging regional dynamics again showed strong consensus, with 62% of the models still predicting escalation. Grok 3 score +3 arguing Iranian-aligned militias attacking U.S. positions over far smaller provocations reveals a core danger of proxy relationships. They foster a hair-trigger dynamic where regional governments risk war, not through their own decisions, but due to forces beyond their control. ChatGPT o3 Mini scored -1, countering the 2019 tanker crisis resolution demonstrates that Gulf states possess both the diplomatic infrastructure and economic incentives to contain conflicts before they spiral beyond control. Across all rounds, Grok sent the strongest signal that escalation between Iran, Israel, the US, and neighboring states is likely, while broad-use families such as Llama, Gemma, and top ChatGPT variants also lean toward rising tensions, albeit with more moderation. Claude, Gemini, and Mistral models all hovered near neutrality, whereas Qwen models tipped toward diplomatic restraint. So, what do you think? Which models will get it right? Share your thoughts in the comments. Huge thanks to my patrons for making this series possible, and let me know in the comments what you want to see next.